Flores never should have had a gun in his hands when he allegedly killed the officers because Flores was a felon, previously convicted of burglarizing his grandparents' home. And after that, in 2020, he was charged with possession of meth, a gun, and ammunition. Those newer felony charges could have landed Flores in jail for years. But under L.A. District Attorney George Gascon, Flores essentially walked, given 2 years probation.
Fox's Matt Finn. A defeat for prosecutors in the college admissions scandal. A federal jury decided Florida investor Amin Khoury was not guilty of bribing a Georgetown University tennis coach to get his daughter into the school. The Golden State Warriors grabbed their fourth NBA championship as they downed the Boston Celtics 103-90 in Game 6 of the finals with a big help from MVP Steph Curry.
6 assists for Green. Curry a long three. It's good! Steph Curry from way downtown. Some Curry chaos here in the third.
That call Thursday night on ESPN. And a concession to justice for freedom riders in North Carolina 75 years after the fact. Legendary civil rights leader Baynard Rustin and 3 other men who were sentenced to work on a chain gang after they launched the first of the freedom rides to challenge Jim Crow laws will have their sentences posthumously vacated on Friday. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
The rising cost of living is affecting all of us on Guam. Our administration has expanded a program. We want to pay for your child's daycare up to $675 a month per child. This means more money in your pocket to pay for other expenses like the cost of gas and groceries. The Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration is investing in Guam's future, and that starts by supporting our working families. We are all in this together, Guam.
This ad is paid for by government funds of the Office of the Governor and the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Today, it's the Friday edition of Tall Tales with your host, Jose Martinez. I will be with you till the very last hour at 5 o'clock, and then we go to a long weekend of 2 days. Told you, we are not going on vacation on Monday. I don't even understand what this holiday is. Supposed to be a new holiday.
It wasn't in the history books when we were growing up.
No, it wasn't in the history books. But, you know, revisionist history is the new 101 these days. So we have to acknowledge everything under the sun now, whether it's been talked about or discussed. I think it's a reactionary thing. But I'll look into it if you guys want me to be knowledgeable about it and know about what I'm criticizing. I just like to be a little bit knee-jerk on criticizing a holiday that comes out of the blue. But I'm not going to dwell on that too much because it is time for Jemmy Ikatni. This is the part of the program where we look through and pour through local media and look for the op-eds and editorials that capture our attention and really motivate us to really think hard. And we're still doing that. We're still searching. However, it kind of makes it easy for us to whittle down the contestants because the Post, the Guam Daily Post, does not write an editorial. They have refused to write an editorial. I think we'll use the word refused.
Well, or they just simply don't have the talent.
Well, we can say the same thing about, no, we don't want to say the same thing about the PDN. PDN has some talents. They've earned a couple of blue stars here and there. I don't have the complete list in front of me, but Bob Klitzkie, when he does return, the regular host of Tall Tales, who will be returning on Monday, has that count. The Guam Daily Post did have a lead, or they still have the lead. They're
sitting on the lead.
They're running away with the lead, and then all of a sudden they just said, we don't have to do anything anymore.
Vacation.
But even with the Guam Daily Post not providing an editorial, the Guam Daily News is still challenged to provide one itself. And even though they have one they call Our View, they still haven't provided a real hard, meaty type of editorial that we could really press.
Vegetarian.
They're vegetarian. Thank you, Daryl. So our view from the Guam PDN today. Officials from the Guam Department of Education reported recently that graduation rates were projected to be low. But our graduating seniors beat the odds when more than 1,800 students broke through the barriers before them, turning their tassels with their classmates just days ago. And to top off summer achievements, the Education Department is projecting another 170 students will join the class of 2022 during the upcoming Rainbow Graduation Ceremony. These graduates and every student following in their footsteps are not just inspirations for us to overcome any challenge presented to us. They are absolute proof that we can and must adapt and do better. Our students have had to endure the past 2 years in the chaos of COVID-19 restrictions, online learning, social distancing, war, violence, financial struggle, and overwhelming uncertainty, and war.
And overwhelming uncertainty.
They don't know what tomorrow holds, but they still move forward. And the increased activity and registration rates of the ongoing Guam DOE Summer School program demonstrate that slowly but surely our students and teachers are fighting for a comeback just as hard as every other sector of our community. While hundreds have been showing up to job fairs in search of new job opportunities, thousands of students from every grade level are making their way to summer school with hundreds of teachers signed up and ready to keep the learning going. And more than 1,000 of our young Guamanians are shaking up their vacation with a bit of responsibility, experience, and the opportunity to put money in their pockets through summer job programs. Opportunities for which participants and parents waited hours in long lines to make possible. A little bit of hyperbole there.
It's a sacrifice.
They waited long lines to get a job. Oh, wow. Nice sacrifice. We commend each and every parent, teacher, and mentor who is making success possible for Guam's youth. It truly does take a village to raise a child, and recent news reports are proof that, despite the hardships of the past 2 years and the challenges upon us today, not all is lost, and progress is still being made, even by the youngest, most vulnerable among us, the unborn. Oh, wait, no, they don't matter. Not to this administration. Times are tough, but so is Guam. Sadzus Maasi to Guam's youth for doing their part to rebuild a community fit for the future.
I think they forgot a whole slice of that pie.
And what is that?
How many got on planes
to leave
the
island?
States? Yes, and how many graduated from private schools?
That's
and
true.
Catholic schools. They start out talking about public school students, and then they finish up talking about how we're going to fill the ranks of jobs on Guam, and in the middle, they talk about parents standing in line so their kids can have government jobs.
Right?
I am not impressed.
Well, this is the thing about this quote unquote op-ed. It's another trumpeting piece of self-congratulatory,
Trumpeting?
trumpeting. I know you get triggered every time I use any word that contains Trump.
It's like
That's
a,
why you shouldn't play
a
poker.
hangnail.
But you know what? What I find incredible is how they are framing summer school this year, because summer school has seen an increase in students and applications, and even though the registrations have been closed, even though they're closed, the registrations are closed, they're still being asked. The schools are still being asked to keep the lines open in case students still want to register. And I would like to know, why is there an increase? And it's not because we just want to hunker back into getting to school.
We want to do better.
I want to say there was considerable damage to the flow of education because of the shutdown of the schools.
There was. And
as controversial as they were, but this is nothing to celebrate. To me, it's a concern because I don't think the summer school sessions are going to reclaim what happened the past 2 years. Kids sat around. Not only were they stressing out about school, they were not being taught properly. Now, the teachers, I'm not going to give any blame to teachers on online schooling because they were not prepared for it. They're not trained for it. And we know that it failed miserably the first year that it was implemented. But I again, this is the third op-ed or editorial in a row that doesn't really have any teeth to it. It just wants to keep I don't know, the Guam Daily cheerleading. I think that's what the newspaper should be, or this op-ed section should be. Our daily cheerlead.
Yeah,
I don't know
and the one thing that I think that everyone really misses is that even the summer school classes that are needed to make sure that students are prepared to move on to the next grade, they don't have as many classes as are in demand.
They're not, and I can attest. My son's going to summer school, and one of the classes he's taking is physical education. Not that he shouldn't be taking that, because it's kind of a strange thing to offer during summer school when there should be other academic stuff happening, and then he can do his phys ed or his activity.
But if you need that in order to advance,
that's
and there's
the
a teacher available, good, but there are sections
but that's the question
that are not available.
Yeah, that's the question I have to ask come Monday is it because it's not available? Because I don't think it is needed. But anyways, that's another subject. I think that summer school ought to have been a requirement this year. In fact, school should have had a small break and then extended through the summer. It's an unpopular thought, but it's something that needs to get done because they didn't even get school correct in the 2021-2022 school year. It was a lot of gaps and a lot of road bumps, and I frankly am surprised of all the graduates.
And no clear path out.
No, none at all. But we do have a clear caller waiting in the wings. Our Carl, the most dangerous man. Our Carl, welcome to this version of Tall Tales.
How are you guys doing?
Very good. How's it going?
All right. Yeah, you're doing a bang-up job. You're doing a yeoman job, stepping into those pretty gigantic shoes.
They are.
They're pretty large, but you and Daryl are doing a very good job.
Thank you very much.
Interesting. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in that it's fairly easy to shut down an economy. If you have the government power behind you, very hard to start it back up. My wife worked for almost 25 years at the Pacific Star, and then it became Guam Marriott Resort, and then it went back to Pacific Star. That fed my family. That business helped provide half of our income to grow my children, to pay for rent and car payments and everything for almost 25 years, and it's gone. it's not coming back probably.
Right.
And how many other businesses died? They're not coming. They're not coming back. They're not getting resurrected. While we were so focused on trying to position ourselves as victims in order to get federal funds flowing and keep those funds flowing as long as possible, the private sector economy was dying, or at least very badly injured. So a lot of these things are not coming back. I think Bob is correct in his assessment that he's not sure if our tourism industry will ever recover to the state it was. The best article I read on this, on handling this, on COVID policies for handling this, quote, pandemic, was by an article I got for free, a free publication in Primus, and it was in October 2020. It was by Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who teaches medicine out of Stanford. And the way this was handled, I blame to a great degree the media and somewhat the medical community on how they framed this issue. Dr. Bhattacharya is from Santa Clara, and I've stated a few times early on in this spread of the virus, at a certain stage it was under 1,000 recognized, quote, cases in Santa Clara. In other words, people who had gone into hospitals were swabbed. Somehow they got swabbed and they were classified, okay, you've got this virus, this COVID. And he was wondering to himself, I wonder how many people in Santa Clara got the virus and were asymptomatic or had very mild symptoms. They thought they had a mild cold and they just brushed it off. Mm-hmm. So he and his team went out into the community and they swabbed, I think it was like 2,000 or 3,000 or whatever it was in their cohort, and they extrapolated out the results, and he estimated that there were over 50,000 people that had the antibodies. 50,000, and the death rate for this group, this cohort, was 0.2%. 0.2%, or one death for every 500 infections.
Wow.
And so I think there's been a huge amount of wrong reaction because of how the whole thing has been framed, and a lack of studying the antibodies out in the community. Because when people have been diagnosed with COVID in the hospital, another thing that's really irritated me is they've never said, were these people with COVID in the hospitals, were they there for completely unrelated reasons? They broke a leg, they were cut, they were in a car accident, and everyone that goes in the hospital has to get swabbed to find out if they have COVID. And, I have to wonder how many people were diagnosed with COVID, and the big headlines came out, 20 people found with COVID, and how many of them actually went to the hospital because of COVID, breathing difficulties, etc.
Right.
And how many were just there for totally unrelated reasons, and they were surprised. I've got COVID? I didn't even know I had COVID. So I partly blame the news, the quote news media, for being totally not curious about this and digging in and saying, well, how many of these people in the hospital were there because of COVID, and how many were there for totally unrelated reasons, didn't even know they had it.
Well, you know what? This is interesting. There's an article that's been passed around in several chats, and I also saw it in a chat that a lot of the listeners here are on, a group of listeners are on, and the title of it says MSN, that's the news the news channel, highlights survey showing severe COVID-19 rare in unvaccinated. And as I go through the article and click on the links, one by one, it seems like the links are disappearing. The MSN article is no longer posted, but there's lots of people who already read this article, and they also cited the CDC showing similar results from surveys like the one that you cited, and again they're disappearing. And this is not. And I was talking to a coworker in my office earlier this morning, that this, I don't think this really has anything to do with, or this doesn't have to be about debating about the vaccination or not. It's about warning, where is this transparency? Where is the information? Why is information withheld, and some information touted as the only sole study or survey that's out there? And this all goes back to what is our media's purpose these days? What is it that the end game? Is it to tout a certain narrative only, or is curiosity has been killed with the cat? Curiosity is no longer a part of the toolbox of a journalist.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the experience of the last few years has caused me to lose faith in a lot of our institutions that I really had placed pretty much complete trust in. That I mentioned that 0.2% result. The death rate of this 50,000 people with the antibodies in Santa Clara. In this same article, and I'll mention the title because you can find it online. It's a fantastic article. It's the best thing I read in over 2 years. Dr. Bhattacharya said this same death rate was found in about 82 or 83 other studies, similar studies done around the world relating to the antibodies, doing swabbing large numbers of people and finding the number that had antibodies. The death rate, the median death rate for all 83 was 0.2%, or one death out of every 500. Some places were a little higher. I think New York City was 0.5, or one death out of every couple of hundred. I think it was Idaho that was 0.13%. It was lower. So it was a variation, but the median death rate for all 82 or 83 studies was 0.2%. One death out of every 500 infections. So, it's just shocking, how this whole thing has been, to me, mishandled because of the way it was framed by the media and the medical community. And I'm not vaccine. My kids all decided to get it. My 4 kids, I never stopped them. My oldest daughter has a heart issue, which she's taking medication for, which affects her immune system. I actually contacted her and, made sure that she did get it because she was at high risk. And for her and people like her that are in these with comorbidities, it makes sense. If I had a comorbidity, one of the major comorbidities, I would be first in line, fighting my way to the front of the line. As it is, I had my blood tested for vitamin D levels. Vitamin D is crucial with combating this virus.
And we were virtually shut in during the whole shutdown of the island. People were told to isolate in rooms and under the cover, and I remember for a time we weren't allowed to go outside. Don't run on the beach or run on the beach. It was kind of a confusing time, but this is interesting because if you pull back, we can always look at situations and incidences when we pull into the frame, right, like a microscope. When you pull back, you kind of see the bigger picture. And I know we're talking about schools initially. Now they're congratulating all the graduates and what GDOE did to overcome the pandemic challenges. But how much of the pandemic challenges were actually due to the virus itself or to the way that we reacted to it? And we have to ask ourselves, is this how we're going to react to every challenge? Is this how we're going to react to every pandemic? Is first with overdone caution, I think an overburden of caution, so much so that we throw out our regular lives and we actually damage our lives for the sake of what? We didn't we seem to have an uptick in suicides. We still have many deaths here on the island. People are still contracting the disease. So how do we go forward from this? I mean, we're still in an emergency situation right now, a declared emergency.
Can I point something out here? Carl, you said that that study in Santa Clara, it was 0.2% was the death rate from those who.
Specifically, that study done by Dr. Bhattacharya and his Bhattacharya and his team.
And I was just running some numbers here, and 0.2% for the nation would be 660,000, and 0.2% for Guam would be 330, which is just under what our actual death count is so far. That's about 80% of what the reported death rate is, and 660,000 is like 2/3 of the nationwide. So he's not that far off.
I just implemented a new rule.
If anyone wants to read that article, because it's a fantastic article, and I recommend everybody subscribe to Imprimis. It's free. It is kind of from a conservative viewpoint, but they always have a good article every month. It's one article. It's small, like a pamphlet. And they ask for a donation, to support their college, Hillsdale College. They don't take any federal funds, not one dime.
Okay.
But it's really a fantastic little publication, and I look forward to it every month. They always have something good, and sometimes they knock it right out of the park. And this article in Imprimis, you can go to Google and Google it, IMPRIMIS. The title of it is A Sensible and Compassionate Anti-COVID Strategy by Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, Jaybhatt, and it's a long name. But if you type that in, I'm sure Google will fill it in for you. But it's a wonderful article, and it just clarified so much for me.
Very
and again,
good.
I'm not anti-vaccine.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you have to keep prefacing that because that's the first thing that comes to mind when everyone wants to have a discussion. They already put everybody in their polar opposites, right? And,
you're a vaccine denier.
You're a vaccine denier, and look, can we just talk about it, right? Can we just have a discussion about this?
Yeah.
Our call is good to hear from you. We're at the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a real quick break, and then when we come back. We're going to have R. Keith on the line.
Just one quick thing. Dr. Bhattacharya's approach is focus protection. Read the articles. Fantastic. Talk to you guys later.
Very good. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. And happy Father's Day, Arthur.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
This Father's Day, treat Dad to the bold flavors of savory hunks of meats at Chili's. Let Dad start off with a choice of flavor-rich Southwestern egg rolls or Texas cheese fries. For entree, Dad gets to choose between a mouth-watering 12-ounce ribeye steak done to his liking or a full rack of Chili's famous baby back ribs paired with his favorite drink, Languitas. Heineken, flavored tea, or Coca-Cola products. At Chili's, more life and great time with Dads happen here. Promo valid June 18 and 19 only.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you.
That wasn't supposed to happen. Anyway, you're back on. We're back.
All right. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. My name is Jose Martinez, and I'm blaming all of that on Daryl. Because I'm not in the booth.
That's right. That's my fingers doing the punching here,
All right,
and I don't know what happened there.
But that's okay. It's just music introing Bob Klitzkie, who will be back on Monday.
That's right. And when it was there, I clicked it, but then something else popped into that spot. Anyway.
We're good. Just real quick, let's do the card. That's the boxing bell. Woohoo! All right. Today on the card we have Leon Guerrero versus Leadership, and might not be the Leon Guerrero you're thinking of. Big Oil versus Big Biden. We're going back to something we talked about yesterday: Slagger versus the media cabal, which leads into another thing that happened over the week. A reporter named Miranda versus Biden, and this has to do with a credibility contest. And then we're going to do our Friday screen test with then private citizen Lulian Guerrero, who is now Governor Lulian Guerrero, when she testified against the Infant Right to Life Act back in 2013, an act that became voted into law and signed into law in 2013. And this is Governor Lulian Guerrero versus infants, parentheses, the elderly and the disabled. We're going to revisit a little bit more and talk a little bit more about Jane's Revenge versus Life, and a interesting story coming out of Europe versus gender dystopia. But right now we have Keith on the line. Good afternoon, Keith.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I just wish to join the discussion on COVID and COVID deaths and COVID death rate.
Go right ahead.
The headlines always call them COVID deaths, but the vast majority aren't. If you, even our local media sources, well, at least the Post, I'll give them credit. They misstate it in the headline. But if you read the articles when they, name the individual and all, they call them COVID related. And if you look at the CDC stats, the overwhelming majority of the quote unquote COVID deaths are not called COVID. They didn't die due to COVID. They're called COVID related deaths.
Right.
And it's, for the most part, I think everyone recognizes that the poor souls that who we're talking about had a variety of already existing medical conditions, or they were elderly, and so there were other things going on, and the water's awfully muddy. And unfortunately, in the bigger discussion that is held, on a national stage, the media, of course, doesn't want to discuss such petty nuances, but it really does need to be discussed. We're not talking about when we cross the million threshold. Oh my God, 1 million people died from COVID. Well, no, not really. What the actual number is, who knows? But there are but there are many, many stories of people who died from other causes. There were a couple cases in Florida where someone got hit by a bus and someone was shot, but they died of COVID, or COVID related. It's because the hospitals get paid $10,000 per COVID death. One of the funnier, leave it to Ray to just be able to nail it. Months and months ago, he brought this up, and he relayed a story. And please stop me if you've heard this. But he said, there was a tale of a tourist who had broken up with his girlfriend, and he had decided to end it all, and he went to Two Lovers Point, and leapt off of Two Lovers Point, hit several rock ledges on the way down, fell to the ocean. They didn't find him for a week, and then a little bit later, outside of Adelup, they found his head, and all the rest of him was gone. And there were big chunks out of him. Obviously, some sharks had gotten to him, and when they brought the remains to the hospital, they stuck a swab in, and lo and behold, they detected that he had COVID. So naturally, it's a COVID-related death.
There you go. Now, this being Tall Tales, we have to provide the correct citation for that story. That was here. Bob Klitzkie was reading a story from our then poet, still poet laureate, Andrew.
My mistake. I had heard it from Ray.
Yeah, and I
So
think
didn't
Ray
know the
also said
original.
on his. Yeah, that was early on the days of the pandemic when Andrew gave us a story of the nose with COVID that was not attached to anybody. And
Right.
so cause of death,
I
of course,
forget-
was COVID. But, we've seen that in
Forgive
real
me if
life.
I missed some-
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. That's okay. And what's funny about good satire, not just funny, but what really makes it smart and good satire is that they really are a reflection of real life. Sometimes they're meant to be funny, but then when they do mirror something that's happened, it makes you think that what kind of world are we living in now? Because I do know some instances where there has some people going to the hospital. On their way, they die on the way to the hospital, and they're going there to the emergency room on totally different reasons, and the cause of death happens to is now said to be related to COVID or because of COVID because it's been tested on the person. I'm not going to go into details, but it is something that the person I know personally it happened to, and it was very saddening that happened, but it was even more of a blow when they were told that COVID was the cause of death or was related to the death when it wasn't. But again, this is something that perpetuated through the media. We had no idea what was going on, or at least we were told that we had no idea what's going on. I think if we, through the lens of time and further investigations, we're gonna find things that are revealed that there might have been more to this story than we thought there was, including what comes out of the World Health Organization and quite possibly the CDC.
Who?
But that's just a conspiracist would say. Not here on Tall Tales because we only deal with the facts, right? Just the facts, man.
Exactly.
Well,
You
go ahead.
You had just one more item. You had Carl and yourself were discussing the current state of the media and the fact that they've essentially tossed journalism to become advocates for a particular party. I for one, gave up on the majority media, especially during the Obama years when they became nothing but cheerleaders. There is plenty of other outlets out there. There are plenty of other outlets out there. They're not the major ones that people think of, but there are a whole slew of, I'll call them new media. I'm hesitant to call them conservative websites because then people might react and go, oh, well, But new media, independent journalists, and also some foreign news media.
Mm-hmm.
I find some of the British papers, German, France, even Israel and Russia, I find them to be all more credible than the majority U.S. media. And because they're not invested in U.S. politics, I find them to be a little bit more forthcoming. And so I recommend to anyone who's looking for some legitimate information or can't find information on a Google search and U.S. media, it's out there. You just need to look beyond. You need to search outside the box of U.S. media. I'm not going to sit here and list some recommended sources. That get a little bit, well, not sure you want me to do that. So, yeah, recommend just look internationally and look for new media. The information is out there, and there's a lot of things we're not being told. Some of it's a little flaky, so you do need to put your specs on and give it a good inspection. But anyway, my 2 cents.
That was a lot of change there, R. Keith. Thank you for clearing that out. Well, thanks for calling, and have a great weekend.
You too.
We're going to go to a quick break. We'll do some inside baseball stuff, but we'll be right back with Tall Tales here on KUSG, The Point, My name is Jose Martinez. Don't go away.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapal, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-RDIO.
Let Choice Broadcasting bring your message to our masses.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapal, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-RDIO.
Good afternoon. It is 4:46 in the afternoon, Friday afternoon. We are coming up on the end of the first hour of Tall Tales for this week. We will be going away for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and great news, Bob is scheduled to be back and return here in this chair on Monday. So we're looking forward to his return, but in the meantime, you guys have me. Woohoo! That's where the crowd cheers.
I was trying to do the crowd cheer for Bob.
That's better. You're right. For Bob. We're looking forward. We have a real quick article here that came out of Guam PDN talking about the Guam EPA lacks funding staff as military construction enters peak. This is what's on the card as Leon Guerrero versus leadership. This is just a really horrible way of me tricking people.
Oh, yeah?
It's not about Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, even though I could make it into that because everything is possible.
Is it about the other Governor, Leon Guerrero?
It's not even about the other Governor, Leon Guerrero.
Well, which Leon Guerrero would that be?
This is about Guam Administrator Walter Leon Guerrero.
Oh, EPA.
Yes, sir.
Ah.
Hence the title. I say I can make this about Lou Leon Guerrero because She's declared herself sole authority during this health emergency, and since it's still continuing until what, July 4th? We could blame everything on her.
Until Independence Day.
Right. Quit teasing us. Anyways, the story goes, the Guam Environmental Protection Agency doesn't have the resource or the staff needed to regulate soil erosion, hazardous waste, and wastewater as military construction on Guam enters its peak years. During a Thursday budget request hearing, officials from Guam EPA told lawmakers that buildup-related activities are expected to increase the already short-handed agency's workload by about 50%. Though the agency is authorized to have 94 full-time staff, there are only 41 on board. Senator Sabina Perez, the oversight chair for the agency, asked whether they were able to fulfill their mandates under the law with the staff on hand. No, ma'am, Guam Administrator Walter Leon Guerrero said. To actually be able to meet all the mandates, we'd probably need our full staffing pattern filled, in addition to more inspectors. Deputy Administrator Michelle Latissimosa added, many of the agency's rules and regulations are outdated and do not provide adequate protection to our limited and fragile environment. This led to the agency working on trying to update them. Many of the vacant employee positions are federally funded, but the salaries aren't enough to be competitive, Leon Guerrero said. One entry-level engineer post has been open for 10 years, but we've never got an applicant, he said. The agency doesn't have enough funding to pay hazardous pay to its employees. Next fiscal year, Guam EPA is expected to review around 6,700 planning documents. One of the biggest projects that the agency will have to review will be the new Marine Corps Base Camp laws, Leon Guerrero said, and the Department of Defense had acknowledged that the base construction would severely impact Guam EPA. We were in negotiations with them, the Department of Defense, to try to get the positions filled, Leon Guerrero said. We just recently got one person that's on probation to see if they can assist on increasing the permit review time, and it's a far cry from when they submitted the impact many years ago, saying that we needed 12 to 15 people. Leon Guerrero said that they are working to petition the U.S. EPA for an increase in their federal funding, which has been capped by law for over a decade, despite increasing responsibility. The agency expects to get about $4.6 million in federal funds next fiscal year and asked the legislature to appropriate a little over $1 million in local money. Lastimosa asked whether an additional $1.5 million in local money would fully fund their staff. Senator Joe San Agustin said, even if you received the funds, you had nobody to hire. We've got to be realistic. He suggested that they revisit the job description of their employees to see if they were able to qualify for an increase in pay. Leon Guerrero said he was working with the University of Guam and Guam Community College to try and recruit students and establish a paid internship. Senator Joanne Brown, formerly a deputy administrator of Guam EPA, criticized Leon Guerrero for his budget presentation. I want to hear a more proactive approach about what's being taken rather than whining about what we don't have and what we can't do. That's where leadership comes out, she said, pointing to the failure to catch the erosion control violations at the Manilao Solar Project, which resulted in millions of dollars in damages last year. Leon Guerrero said Brown's comments were appalling and offensive. He asserted that the agency was going above and beyond and that the number of permits and citations they had been issuing over the years had been increasing. And a great article.
It just came to
with a really funny ending.
Why wouldn't the fines that were levied go to the agency that would allow them to fund the positions to be able to catch these types of violations?
Well, yeah, that's all. Again, the microscope on the issue, but pull yourself out, pull the focus out, zoom out of the issue, and you're seeing a there is, and for all intents and purposes, Joanne's words might have been striking because they came to this hearing wanting to give their issues and hoping for answers, and the answers usually mean we're going to give you more money or we're going to give you the money you're asking for.
What's a budget hearing? Right?
Yeah, right. But when some of the answers come across as criticisms, even though sometimes they could be righteous criticisms, I think the worst way you can answer is that's appalling and offensive. Just take it in stride, I think, and understand where it's coming from. But I don't know who Walter Leon Guerrero is and what his record is at the EPA. But it seems troubling that there has been a position that's been left vacant for 10 years, and there has been no single application. How come nothing's been visited, or how come that hasn't been reviewed of how we can get that out there to even recruit off island? Or how come we haven't gone to GCC or UOG to say these are the positions we need? How about we push for something coming out of here? It just seems kind of interesting that they're talking about it, but yeah, like what Senator Brown said, where's the proactive part about this?
Every time they put out an announcement for a job, they have a good idea because of nationwide job responses for people who have those skills and what other people are getting in other markets, in a free market. And if they're not adjusting as they go along, that's part of why over the years we've been hearing about Guam EPA having to return money every year unspent. Well, why didn't they just work on this to be in a position to spend the money on the programs that are authorized? And also, the cost of the military buildup. There's a government of Guam, there's a cost to the government of Guam to do those things that it has to do to provide that local input on federal activities. And so we know that there's going to be inspections.
We've known this for a long time, and they noticed. And they said this in here. They said that they were asked to have at least 12 to 15 people on hand to work through these things. So this is, again, Thursday was a budget request hearing. And what was last year's budget request hearing like? Was it the same story? Was it the...
It was COVID.
Again, pull out of the bigger picture.
Right. Because
it's COVID. The military buildup did not stop during COVID at all. No. So why did all these other things stop in the government? What foresight or what mindset was thinking that we could stop everything, but everything else around us can keep going on and nothing will be affected?
You remember over the past couple of years they were talking about the firing range up at Retidian, and there were people who were going out. They were talking about the damage to the environment. So we did have people involved. There were reviews of the plans that were ongoing.
But see,
and if there was available money, then it could have been reprogrammed with the assistance of the federal government, reprogram the available money to contractual category, so they could bring people in temporarily under contract to fulfill those functions.
Yeah, and again, this is indicative of weak leadership. And I'm not saying that I could take over it, because I can watch a football game and still criticize the quarterback and not really know how to throw a really good pass.
When we see this going on,
to do it.
That's right. When we see this going on year after year, we could see what's going on and what's not going on, and we know that these people are being paid every 2 weeks.
Yep.
And they have, the administrative overhead is still being charged against all of the accounts.
Here's a good example of what we see on the outside of Gov Guam. Today, the Senate had a hearing, an emergency hearing, and they started, I want to say, 45 minutes, maybe an hour later than they was scheduled to start. And then after they started, it took them over a 15 to almost 20-minute recess to get the committee together, to sit in front of the other senators. And the whole process was just like walking through molasses. Like, there was no sense of urgency. And I know people are going to come back and say, well, you don't know the whole thing, that everything that goes on, Jose, so how could you be critical of it. But we're watching this happen. We're watching this live. We're seeing how we all in the private sector have a schedule to meet, or else we don't get paid. But we see this lackadaisical slowness. I'm going to get paid anyways. This is how I'm going to move type attitude.
I've been in. This is not a business. It is a gaggle.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're trying to get a gaggle together to conduct business, and it doesn't go smoothly. It's not scripted like the January 6th
But leadership
committee.
can help.
It's not. It's not.
Right.
It's not a TV production.
We're coming close to the top of the hour and the big halftime show. You're watching Tall Tales here on KUSG, The Point. My name is Jose Martinez. It is 4:59. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A deadly church shooting in Alabama. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Police south of Birmingham are trying to figure out why a gunman opened fire at a church in Vestavia Hills last night.
A lone suspect entered a small group church meeting and began shooting. 3 people were shot. 2 people are deceased. 1 person is being treated for an unknown injury at a local hospital.
Police Captain Shane Ware, the shooting happened at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. The suspect is in custody. Then, in the wake of such vicious attacks, a bipartisan group of senators says it has reached an agreement in principle for gun safety legislation. The measure aims to address mental health resources, school safety, and access to firearms. January 6th last year was a close call for then Vice President Pence. The House committee investigating the Capitol riot accused then President Trump of endangering his vice president.
A legal theory presented to former President Trump by attorney John Eastman allowing former Vice President Mike Pence to reject states' electoral votes was rejected by White House attorneys.
I said, "You're completely crazy."
Former White House attorney Eric Hirschman described his conversation with Eastman to the House Select Committee.
I said, "Are you out of your effing mind?"
Members of the committee also revealed rioters who broke into the Capitol came within 40 feet of Pence, arguing a tweet sent by former President Trump after Pence rejected intervening in the electoral count, inflamed an increasingly violent protest.
Fox's Jared Halpern on Capitol Hill. And Americans are weighing in on the state of moral values in the U.S. in a Gallup poll. 50% of them calls those values poor. 37% said they're only fair. Just 1% describes them as excellent. America's listening to Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Convicted and jailed attorney Michael Avenatti pleads guilty to defrauding clients in a California case.
Avenatti entered the plea in a Santa Ana federal courtroom on charges of wire fraud and an additional tax charge. He could be sentenced to more than 80 additional years behind bars. Avenatti is accused of taking clients' cash settlements and moving them to his own accounts. What he took is said to range into millions of dollars. He's already serving 5 years on convictions for taking book proceeds from porn actress Stormy Daniels and for trying to extort Nike. He is scheduled to be sentenced on Thursday's plea in September, unless the government decides to pursue other charges. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
An impactful day for Elon Musk. Yesterday, he met with employees of Twitter, which he may soon own, telling them he's against a hybrid work schedule and he feels they should return to the office. And separately, a cryptocurrency investor sued him for more than $250 billion, claiming Musk ran a Dogecoin pyramid scheme. And sizzling heat's taking a deadly toll on farm animals.
Something is rotten in the state of Kansas. Soaring triple-digit temperatures, high humidity, and stagnant winds are being blamed for 2,000 cattle deaths in the southwestern part of the state. That's according to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. The agency scrambled to quell rumors on social media that something other than weather is to blame. Neither neighboring Oklahoma or Nebraska have reported such a high number of cattle deaths. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And Americans checking their 401k investments this morning may be reeling from yesterday's stock market plunge. The Dow dived 400, make that 741 points to close below 30,000. This is Fox News.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh does it again, bringing back a classic fan favorite on the menu. The roast beef returns. And not just any roast beef, it's choice Angus roast beef, flavorful and satisfying on its own, or layered with oven-roasted turkey and Black Forest ham in the Subway Club. Whether you're a choice Angus roast beef purist or like the variety of the Subway Club, both come piled high on hearty multi-grain bread with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Get your fill of the new roast beef at Subway. Eat fresh.
I'm Attorney Thomas Fisher, and I'm running for senator. I'm not the typical candidate you're used to seeing. I have no relatives here, no political obligations, and no personal agenda. If you're tired of being disappointed by your lawmakers, maybe different is what you need.
Vote Thomas J. Fisher for senator. If you want different, vote different. Log on to tomforguam.com for his platform and look for Tom on Instagram and Facebook.
I'm Thomas Fisher. I not only approved this message, I wrote it.
Drake Diaz, Treasurer.
Hafaday, Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's
Welcome back to the program. Big halftime show is over. Go ahead, admit it. Some of you guys are conducting the orchestra. I do. I do sometimes. In my head this time. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG, The Point, 93.3 FM. almost gave another radio station's call letters out there. Very similar. But my name is Jose Martinez. I'll be your host for the remainder of the day. I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in for the past 3 days as our esteemed host, Judge Bob Klitzkie, was on a much well-deserved respite. He will be back on Monday to sit in this chair. He will be sitting taller than I am, more handsome than I am. And he has more hair than I do, even though...
That's fact.
That's fact. We're all about facts here. Just the facts, ma'am. Back in 2013, then Senator Frank Biogan had introduced a bill called the Infant Child's Right to Life Act. And it was co-sponsored, but I think the entire session here of the 32nd legislature. Ultimately, it was voted on and it passed in the legislature and was signed into law. But not every senator who had co-sponsored it decided to vote for it. But that's not the story. The story is about those who testified against this act. Let me just read the introduction here as it was written for Bill 195. I can't remember what the public law is, but this is the bill. An act to add a new Chapter 91 to Title 9 Guam Code Annotated relative to protecting infants who are born alive as a result of an abortion through the establishment of the Infant Child's Right to Life Act. Legislative findings and intent. The Guam legislature finds that a proposal was previously introduced in a prior legislature that would protect the life of a child who was brought into this world through the abortion process and who upon extraction from the mother's womb is found to still be alive. The Guam legislature recognizes that a child in this situation who is found to be alive and must be preserved, and every effort be made to protect the child's life. Therefore, it is the intent of the Guam legislature to enact legislation that will require that in such cases whereupon an infant that, through an abortion process, is found to still be alive, that life must be recognized as a human being and thus must be extended the right to life. That was the introduction of the bill. It almost seems kind of common sense, right? A baby is born. They're alive.
It was delivered, not aborted.
It was delivered and not aborted. You should afford medical attention or any kind of assistance after that. But we needed to have this, and there were people who testified against it. The usual pro-choice / pro-abortionists that go in front of the legislature at every hearing of pro-life legislation voted against this, or testified against this. Our governor at the time was a private citizen. So as Lilian Guerrero, she testified against this bill, and there was 3 points she made to it. The first point was you're going to be jeopardizing the professionalism of our doctors and nurses. And then the second one is the one I want to play for you guys here about the cost that will be levied on families and society and the government if we allow these children to be helped, even though they survived an abortion. So without further ado, here is the testimony of then private citizen Lilian Guerrero testifying against the Infant Right to Life Act.
This bill is very anti-quality of life because it does not consider the expense that the family will incur as a result of mandating treatment that most likely will not result in a quality of life outcome for the infant. Instead, what this bill does is it will burden the family with enormous medical bills. On the conservative side, if care and treatment is given for a year, that family or the government, if the infant becomes a ward of the territory, will at a minimum pay $273,000 a year just on hospital room charges. This does not include pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and health professional time. So it will be $273,000 plus a year. This means taking away limited resources that could be used by others that may have a better chance of a quality of life. I know that some will say you cannot put a price tag on life and money should not be a factor. But the reality of the situation is the family, the government, does not have the human and economic resource to provide the care that is required to sustain a life that medical science will tell you is not living a quality of life. You struggle daily to meet the challenges of healthcare costs. We saw that with the hospital and health insurance debates that you guys made. And now this bill will further add on to the challenges when it does not have to. Lastly, I would like to make this comment. We all have a greater challenge in our island. The community is more concerned on how we can decrease our unemployment rate.
Okay. And I want to play that last part here because it's kind of ironic. We'll play it again next Friday. And that last part she talks about is what it's one of those I know this is the bill, but what about all this other stuff that we need to talk about? We don't have to talk about this bill because we're going to talk about all this other stuff over here. But I want to get back to what you just heard here. This bill is very anti-quality of life because it does not consider the expense that the family will incur as a result of mandating treatment that most likely will not result in a quality of life outcome for the infant. And it chilled me when I heard that.
It's disgusting.
It's chilling because what if you apply that to every other instance where she applies her quality of life litmus test to a person who's disabled, a person who's mentally incapacitated, the elderly, right? Those who are bedridden, those who can't speak. Think of people like Helen Keller who can't speak or hear. Their quality of life is who's to determine. And this is what she testified to. Let us not forget that she testifies pro-abortion and pro-choice in every pro-life legislation. So, but in this instance, we're not talking about an unborn baby, the quote-unquote clump of cells that they always try to picture or illustrate. We're talking about a living human being who is right there in front of healthcare professionals, who is born, who every human being who was born was in the same exact position. Because we weren't born and then left to our own devices. We received care. We received all sorts of care to make sure that our birth wasn't done in vain because we were just left there after we came out of our mother's womb.
You just didn't jump up and run away like
No, we
Bambi?
didn't. No, we didn't. And this is why this is important that we see this and hear this testimony, because this is exactly the foundation that I talk about, that we should look in leaders, and should we look on those who are supposedly guiding our society. If there is a falter, if there's a flaw in the foundation of life, of a leadership, for me, this is my own opinion, then I don't know if I trust that leadership quality or factor in all other means of leadership when it comes to protecting the elderly, protecting the disabled, or protecting those who she disagrees has a quality of life. And so I really encourage everyone to look this video up. It's we'll play it every Friday, every time that we remember to play it. But it's not digging at something that she has a private opinion. This is a public opinion now. This is public testimony that's recorded. That was a testimony against a bill called the Infant Right to Life Act.
Right, and this is it's listed as Bill 195-32, testimony of Lou Leon Guerrero against the bill.
Right.
That's the title of the YouTube
and there's a
video.
secular pro-life organization here on Guam called the Esperanza Project, and they posted this video on their YouTube channel. So you can look up Esperanza. I think it's with an S, not a Z. You'll see Esperanza on other places, and that'll be there.
And also the date of this was October 17, 2013.
Yeah, and the irony about this is a bill that was introduced by then Senator Frank Biogun, and then in the first term of the elections back in 2018? When was 4 years ago from here? So yeah, 2018 was the election, right, for the governor. Anyways, there was a runoff election between, or a write-in campaign between Senator Frank Uggan, or candidate Frank Uggan, and Lou Leon Guerrero.
Yes, yes.
And, it's really interesting that Frank didn't latch on to this and didn't run with this. Not to say whether he would have won or lost because of this issue, but it's an issue that nobody brought up at all. Nobody cared to delve into, or probably a lot of people didn't even know about it. Probably people didn't even know that she had testified against the life of a born infant. Okay, moving right along. We'll play it in. We'll talk it some more in the coming weeks. The next thing on the list here is Big Oil versus Big Biden. I say Big Biden, mostly Big Biden, Biden's big britches, because I think he might be swinging at things that he shouldn't be swinging at. Recently, the president had written a letter to oil executives, and he even has gone on the air and talked about who's to blame for the gas prices. We have hearings that are going on right now. I haven't been paying attention too much. I'm going to watch them later on. But local hearings on gas prices and what's going on, what are we going to do about it? We know that we can't control the oil prices internationally. Those are prices set by other cabals and big companies. But there are some things that could have been done, I believe, and I think a grand majority of people who, even those who possibly voted for Biden, are coming to understand that he fulfilled one of his promises, and that's to get rid of oil. We just either didn't believe it or could think he would do it so quickly. And of course, he blames everything on Putin right now. Everything that's happening in the world is the war in Ukraine, and it could affect a lot of things, but maybe not the way that a real leader would allow another country's leader to affect his country's well-being, especially when we're not directly involved in the war. But this article, I believe, came out of townhall.com. ExxonMobil comes out swinging in response to Biden's letter to oil companies. ExxonMobil pushed back against the accusations President Biden lobbed against oil companies in his letter to executives this week. The company said it invested more than any other company to develop U.S. oil and gas supplies at a cost of more than $50 billion in the last 5 years. These investments have brought about a nearly 50% increase in the company's U.S. production. Globally, we've invested double what we've earned over the past 5 years, $118 billion on new oil and gas supplies, compared to net income of $55 billion, the company said in a statement. This is a reflection of the company's long-term growth strategy and our commitment to continuously invest to meet society's demands for our products. Addressing the president's accusation that companies did not restore refining capacity that was reduced at the start of the pandemic, ExxonMobil said it continued investing despite losses. Specific to refining capacity in the U.S., we've been investing through the downturn to increase refining capacity to process U.S. light crude by about 250,000 barrels per day, the equivalent of adding a new medium-sized refinery, the statement said. We kept investing even during the pandemic when we lost more than $20 billion and had to borrow more than $30 billion to maintain investment to increase capacity to be ready for post-pandemic demand. Biden, attempting to shift blame from the effects of his oil and gas policies, blasted the companies for profiteering off the high prices and threatened that his administration may use emergency authorities to increase refinery capacity and output in the near term. ExxonMobil, for its part, suggested ways the administration could help, including actually offering consistent support for the industry. In the short term, the U.S. government could enact measures often used in emergencies following hurricanes or other supply disruptions, such as waivers of Jones Act provisions and some fuel specifications to increase supplies, ExxonMobil said. Longer-term government can promote investment through clear and consistent policy that supports U.S. resource development, such as regular and predictable lease sales, as well as streamlined regulatory approval and support for infrastructure such as pipelines. In responding to Biden's letter, Republicans reminded the president that rather than blame oil companies, he should look in the mirror. And here they have a couple of tweets that reflect videos where Biden had said in 2020, no more subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, no more drilling, including offshore, no ability for the oil industry to continue to drill. It ends. And that was his plan to tackle the climate crisis. And this was said during the Democratic presidential debate. Then came out, this is from the Daily Wire, the title of this article is Oil Experts Release 10-Point Plan for Biden to Fix Energy Crisis That Has Erupted Under His Leadership. Remember, this is Town Hall, so those headlines are their headlines. A leading oil and gas organization released a 10-point plan this week for Democrat President Joe Biden to follow to stop the historic fuel costs that have erupted under his administration. And the plan contained in a letter from Mike Summers, the president and CEO of American Petroleum Institute, API, the only national trade association that represents all aspects of America's oil and natural gas industry. Summers' letter came in response to Biden attacking the industry this week. Quote, your administration has restricted oil and natural gas development, canceled energy infrastructure projects, imposed regulatory uncertainty, and proposed new tax increases on American oil and gas producers competing globally, the letter states. Respectfully, the American people need a different direction to solve this crisis. And I'll just list some of the 10 points here he has. 1, lift development restrictions on federal lands and waters. The Department of the Interior should swiftly issue a 5-year program for the outer continental shelf and hold mandated quarterly onshore lease sales with equitable terms. DOI should reinstate canceled sales and valid leases on federal lands and waters. 2, designate critical energy infrastructure projects. Congress should authorize critical energy infrastructure projects to support the production, processing, and delivery of energy. 3, fix the NEPA permitting process. Your administration should revise the National Environmental Policy Act process by establishing agency uniformity in reviews, limiting reviews to 2 years, and reducing bureaucratic burdens placed on project proponents in terms of size and scope of application submission. Also said, 4, accelerate the Natural Gas Act to streamline Congress should amend the Natural Gas Act to streamline the Department of Energy to single approval process for all U.S. liquefied natural gas projects. This will enable the U.S. to deliver reliable energy to our allies abroad. Unlock investment and access to capital. The Securities and Exchange Commission should reconsider its overly burdensome and ineffective climate disclosure proposal, and your administration should ensure open capital markets where access is based upon individual company merit, free from artificial constraints based on government-preferred investment allocations. Again, these are direct responses to things that Biden had said he was going to do, and he can't continue to blame everything else when his policy specifically has been hurting these industries. Here's another one. Dismantle the supply chain bottlenecks. You should rescind steel tariffs that remain on imports from U.S. allies. This is a Trump policy, though, if I remember correctly. Is that
That's
true?
right. But this is what the president can do.
Mm-hmm. To help our
current president can do these things.
And let's see, there rescind steel tariffs that remain on imports from U.S. allies, as steel is a critical component of energy production, transportation, and refining. Let's see the number here. Number 7, advance lower carbon energy tax provisions. And here's Congress should expand and extend Section 45Q tax rates for carbon capture, utilization, and storage development, and create a new tax credit for hydrogen produced from all sources. 8, protect competition in the use of refining technologies. Your administration should ensure that future federal agency rulemakings continue to allow U.S. refineries to use the existing critical process technologies to produce the fuels needed for global energy markets. Number 9 is end permitting obstruction on natural gas projects. He did this on day one when he got into office, right? The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission should cease efforts to overstep its permitting authority under the Natural Gas Act and should adhere to traditional considerations of public needs, as well as focus on direct impacts arising from the construction and operation of natural gas projects. And the last one, advance the energy workforce of the future. The 2 major oil companies have already fired back at Biden, saying that his administration needs to do more to fix the issue. In the short term, the U.S. government, this is a quote from them, in the short term, the U.S. government could enact measures often used in emergencies, and we read that in the other article. That's what ExxonMobil said. And then Chevron slammed the administration in response to the Biden letter, writing, unfortunately, what we have seen since January 2021 are policies that send a message that the administration aims to impose obstacles to our industry, delivering energy resources the world needs. And that's from the big profit, big oil industry. And I know there's going to be people who talk about, well, they should pass the savings on to us if they're making $55 million in net profit. But the bottom line is that the policies I believe that the Biden administration has placed on the country, although we don't receive here on Guam our oil directly from the U.S. the way that they do in the States, it affects the entire world.
Well, these the Biden energy policies went into effect a year before the invasion of Ukraine. And Russia is a major producer, exporter of oil, and part of our response was sanctions, and those sanctions were joined by Europe. And it's taken 3 months, but even 3 months has been a creeping restriction on the dependence on Russian oil, which has in itself, because these are policies, drove up the price of oil because of scarcity. Russia,
which
in the
is
meantime,
the way
has
capitalism
made
works, right?
That's right.
Commerce
and in
works.
the meantime, Russia has been able to sell at the higher price, world price, to countries that are still importing their oil.
Like Germany is still importing their oil, aren't they? Or did they cease
They're
already?
slowing it down.
Yeah.
But yes, at the current market price. India as well, because it's still world price, but and they've got a glut of oil.
Right.
It's like a glut of grain sitting in storage in Ukraine.
And again, there's lots of controversy and debate about the environmental impacts of oil in the natural gas industry.
But these are different. They're two different subjects.
Yeah.
Yes, you can have a climate change
But
agenda.
that's the political part of
These
his
are
policies.
all policies.
Yeah, and he had to fulfill those because he claimed. Yeah, I'm sure he claimed that's the reason why he was voted in.
If it was not for that,
Yeah.
it would be President Trump's second term. Enough Democrats came out because he needed to get those votes as well.
A lot of them were resurrected from the grave too. I stand by that story.
But you see, these policies were what he brought in, and the oil companies are right to push back really hard now.
Right.
Not only on Biden's policies, but even policies that.
But for
from
us,
Trump years.
commentators, those of us who are talking heads, those of us who read the news and try to decipher what's coming out here, can see another picture of the ridiculousness of promoting these smart vehicles, these electric vehicles that obviously have to be powered up by something. And they don't get powered by other batteries. They don't get powered up by solar. They get powered up by sticking the plug into the outlet, because that electricity that powers up those batteries are generated using oil. And when these policies have hurt,
coal is already been
yeah.
reduced.
And all this does is affect even those productions. California, and I know there's lots of, I keep saying I know because I look at all sides of the news that comes out here. California has started restricting, I guess, in a sense, people from charging their cars because they're using a lot of electricity and oil to charge their cars. They have to regulate that now.
That's all.
It's so ironic.
Part of the process. Actually, it's part of the evolution. Mm-hmm. And we've moved away from coal. We're under Trump and under Obama and Trump, and we're starting to move away from oil under Trump and Biden. And because of the war, if it wasn't for the war, it would be on a smooth track.
I disagree with that.
But it's because of the war and the shortage, now we don't have anything to fall back on, and prices are rising.
This is why I don't believe it has anything to do with the war. If anything were to happen, we would always blame whatever happened. But the bottom line is that these policies hurt us, so that if anything happened, we would be falling into this hole. So the policies didn't take into effect that the world is not perfect.
Because the amount of oil that was pulled off the market is not something that you can simply switch on and produce at a moment's notice.
Exactly. And so what happened is the prices went up.
It's only been 3 months. Prices go up because of the availability of oil. We need to take a break here.
Yes, we do. It is 5:34. You are listening to Tall Tales with your host, Jose Martinez. I have Daryl Taggarty covered for me in the production booth. Don't go away. We'll be right back after the 7-inning stretch.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning shows.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Bottom of the 7th. I hope everyone is back from the bathroom, getting their popcorn, their hot dog, their soda, and that tray full of beer. Because we are back here on Tall Tales. My name is Jose Martinez. It is 5:36. Just a couple more segments before we close the program for the weekend. And Daryl, you go back to your regular duties.
Well, I'm going to have a day off on Monday. I'm going to take that day.
Oh, really?
Nah, actually, Bob's coming back, and I got to get him ready for his next trip.
Yeah, he's talking about Bob Kelly, our other Bob. You know, that's the two Bobs I know on the island are both last name started with a K, so we can't call him Bob K. K1, K2. That's always works. Let's get off with this. The next thing on the card is Slager versus Media Cabal. And latching onto that is Miranda versus Biden, or Miranda versus Biden. It's a credibility contest. our Keith was talking about earlier today, his and also our Carl, talking about the loss in trust in media. And, for the most part, I think the media has always been what it's always been. I remember when I went to, a little bit of background, when I went to college, I actually went on a communication concentration, a communication major with a concentration on radio and television. I was a technical person. I really wanted to get into it. But just like many stories of people who go to college, they get caught up in the whole philosophical part of school and not really looking to get a job. So I ended up studying more philosophy and religion. But I worked my way through school at the work program as a cook, and I became a chef. And that was my career for about 13 to 15 years, depending on how you look at my career, I started out dishes and then prep and then all other stuff. But what I remember most about my fellow classmates at the time, my peers, is that some of us looked back and said, you guys are not here for journalism, are you? You're here to tell a story and bear the weight of the world on your shoulders. It was kind of funny. They all had an activism kind of mindset to a lot of why they were there. And so there's a couple of people, my peers, who were there because they wanted to be sportscasters or things like that. Mm-hmm. But there were some that were more like wanted to tell the world story and fix the world type thing. And that was just in the back of my mind. That wasn't my main mindset in life at the time. But when I read articles like this, I'm like, I went to school with these kind of people, these reporters and journalists that were forming in my university, my school. And I'm not saying that that's bad or good, but it helps me understand why we see headlines like examples mount that journalists are less focused on reporting than activism. And we see that in a lot of our 24-hour news, right?
Yeah, but I also, as you were telling the story, I've always separated out schools of communication from journalism. And the reason is that communication is the industry. It's the delivery system, and you have people in communications who are speech writers. They are advertising copy creative types. They are layout, physical layouts like banners on the side of the road or social
that's
media
under the umbrella
under
the umbrella.
Right, and that they're trying to get into the industry of the medium, whatever electronic media, not journalism. Journalism was, and still is, an area unto itself that has to do with the content, not the mechanics or the market.
But that concentration fell underneath that department, and that's where it was, and that's how I experienced these types of mindsets or the philosophy of some of those students. But getting back to this, I'm not saying that journalism is void of activism in the sense that it's pure. It should be pure from it, because a lot of the stories that we heard from or that we've read about in the past came out from activist journalism. What was the name of that story where the guy went into the meat markets, into the butcher shops?
Right. You just go to Detroit Free Press,
right, things like that. But
Mother Jones News, and you're going to have, but there are going to be people who go to these, who bring stories to these outlets,
right?
Because they have investigated them.
But that's investigative reporting. But as far as reporting the news, but let me just get to this article real quick, because I think it's interesting how it's compiled some of these things, and then another story comes out that talks about USA Today. So this one is from written by Brad Slager. He is a writer for RedState.com. Red State, of course, is a conservative type blogosphere, and he writes, "It has become more than a trend this year that journalists work towards an agenda. While we have become accustomed to journalists who act up and take action on behalf of pet causes, there is no reason why we need to accept this. The moment is approaching where it appears the general public needs to begin pushing back. The veneer of objectivity and nonpartisanship journalism is wearing off as media increasingly takes on the role of narrative pushing, something we see moving down to a granular level. Currently, the most glaring evidence of this activity is on the coverage of the January 6th Commission, but this is far from the lone example. We are constantly being told how the January 6th Commission will bring forth a solid case, only to see the abject lack of hard proof. This has been a pure case of insistence over revelation. As I mentioned in the recent Liable Sources podcast, it is less of a hearing and entirely more of a telling. But to step away from that kangaroo court, we see the journalism sector filled with cases of the press doing less reporting and more undertaking. This behavior ramped up in Florida when the proposed parental rights and education bill was crafted. Opposition groups relabeled the legislation the, quote, "Don't Say Gay" bill inaccurately, and soon the agitprop, I don't know that word, was regurgitated entirely by the press. As the concept of a state banning gays became accepted, the press went to work. An early example was from The Hollywood Reporter, where left-lurching columnist Kim Masters targeted the Disney Corporation as an entity that was not doing enough to battle this legislation. When the Florida bill passed and was signed into law, the press did not learn a lesson. Collectively, they only felt more emboldened, and for some reason. So when the infamous leaked Alito draft memo crept out of SCOTUS, out of the Supreme Court of the United States, the leftist media went into overdrive. Examples of journalists taking to the streets, or more accurately to their phones and social media, were seen across the media landscape. We are not being served examples of reporters responding to a corporate letter. Journalists are working to provoke these press releases. At CNBC, they contacted several companies to compel reactions and statements of opposition to the abortion law alliteration. Soon after, the Washington Post specifically went after video game companies in a similar manner, and the lack of social outrage angered video game columnist Nathan Grayson. And I quote, this is a quotation from one of his columns: "The silence is especially conspicuous following the industry's near unilateral support of causes like Black Lives Matter in the wake of George Floyd's murder and anti-Asian hate as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In both of these cases, many big companies released donated to charitable causes, updated internal policies, and added in-game features to allow players to express their support." Note the tone that this is almost compulsory for these companies. Not only are they expected to make public announcements, they are fully expected to be in line with the position taken by these once claimed unbiased reporters. And we saw that yesterday when we were talking about Del Rio and his seemingly but tweet that he put out, that one message, but then it became magnified by that one sports writer who wanted to harp more on what he said and be outraged by it, that caused Del Rio to get fined by his team. Initially because he provided the wrong opinion, but then ultimately because he provided a distraction, no matter the opinion, right? So Slager also gives another example where this wrong-headed attempt came from the Democratic nominee in the election, Attorney General Josh Shapiro, in opposing Mastriano. Well, let me see here. The most blatant example of his wrong-headed attempt comes from the Democratic nominee in the election. Attorney General Josh Shapiro is opposing Mastriano, and he takes a sober position on the matter. Quote, "Personally, I think Martin's makes a damn good potato roll, and I'm not for boycotting a Pennsylvania business that supports hundreds of Pennsylvania jobs," Shapiro said in a statement to the Post. "The Martin family runs a private company and has the right to support and employ whoever they want." So here is the political opponent stating how it is wrong to target a business and people like this over political issues. There may be no better example of the kind of imbalanced thinking on display in our media these days. As they engage in partisan and personal hits, attempting to force companies into the culture wars, they do so at an extreme beyond that seen in the mudslinging of campaigns. Companies have been gradually coming to the realization that taking these kinds of positions is bad for business. The exception, those companies that own and operate these news outlets. And we've seen it. I mean, the soft example we see is just this month alone. I mean, how many people seen on their apps, on their phones, some of the app icons change from what we normally think it is to a rainbow-colored app? I know Paramount Plus did that on my phone. Facebook, it was big news kind of last year when Facebook saw all these different companies replace their profile pics with rainbow-style pics, only to be quickly changed after the month of June, right? Or
Right.
how about the example of Disney putting out, not Disney, let me think here, or a company who is internationally known with their logo in rainbow color, except for in Saudi Arabia, China, all these other countries that don't protect or support the LGBTQ lifestyle, right?
Right.
But what's funny is journalists don't really say anything about that. We had to find out from people who looked into it, seeing the discrepancy between one side or the other. But this article that I want to tag on to this the story by Brad, the commentary by Brad Slager, is USA Today put out a report that they had to delete nearly 24 news articles by a reporter named Gabriela Miranda. And I can't wait to see the final report on this, on the reason why, but I'm going to read some of the articles, the names of the articles that had to be erased. But the story goes that USA Today was forced to delete 2,000 articles this week after an internal investigation found that breaking news reporter Gabriela Miranda had allegedly fabricated sources and then gave investigators false evidence to try to cover up her actions. After receiving an external correction request, USA Today audited the reporting work of Gabrielle Miranda, and the audit revealed that some individuals quoted were not affiliated with the organizations claimed and appeared to be fabricated. The existence of other individuals quoted could not be independently verified. In addition, some stories included quotes that should have been credited to others. Didn't we see something like this a couple of years ago?
Yes. There have been a number relied on journalists.
Sources say.
Well, these companies have a number of journalists, and they pay them for their stories. And then the companies found out that the stories that were being filed were fabricated and not worth the money being paid. And then they went back and they both broke the contributors' professional credentials publicly,
right?
And issued, like you're just pointing out, the removal of articles by whatever was contributed. So, like, whatever was truthful in those was tossed also, because everything was called into question.
They have to.
It's a matter of credibility, and that's just,
Bob points that out almost every day on this show when we go through news articles and can spot out clear fabrications or even disinformation in the article, and it makes you want to question the rest of the article. We had, I want to say it was a broadcast media. I don't want to say the name because I'm not too sure which one it was, who said that because of the insular cases, people in the Pacific Islands territories are not considered citizens, which is completely false. Something that's easily fact-checked, because anybody who's here on Guam is a U.S. citizen as far as who is a citizen of Guam.
We're finding lots of not only sloppy writing on the part of journalists, but also the editors, because there's an editor that supervises every article that comes that's filed.
But how many are overlooked because of this activist mindset, right?
Well, let's take a break.
Let's take a break. Yeah, we're going to go to Churchill Downs and we'll be right back. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG, The Point, 93.3 FM. Don't go away.
I think all of us on Guam. Our administration has expanded a program. We want to pay for your child's daycare up to $675 a month per child. This means more money in your pocket to pay for other expenses like the cost of gas and groceries. The Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration is investing in Guam's future, and that starts by supporting our working families. We are all in this together, Guam.
This ad is paid for by government funds of the Office of the Governor and the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktat, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Last segment here on Tall Tales before the weekend, before we go away for 2 days. But we'll be back on Monday. Bob Klitzkie is scheduled to return, his triumphant return from his 3-day respite here on Tall Tales. He'll be right here in this chair.
On a federal holiday.
Background. It's a federal holiday. I don't know what federal holiday this is. I didn't vote for it. We're supposed to be democratic process, right? I didn't vote for it. But, yeah, so just to run down this list of articles, and this is just reading from the headlines. The 23 articles that the USA Today had to delete include Washington, D.C. couples call wedding dance ban excessive. I kind of want to read these articles now and listening to these headlines. One is TikTok bans milk crate challenge from its app, citing concerns over dangerous acts. Here's one. Texas abortion ban could lead to stockpiling contraceptives and pregnancy tests. Real life Squid Games. Hit show a chance to spotlight Korean culture. You know what Squid Games are, Daryl?
No,
I didn't watch it. It was a really popular Netflix show about a reality show in a dystopia type society where the winners kept their lives and I think the losers lost their lives. But it was very popular. You see a lot of the costumes during Halloween of 2021 reflected the Squid Game characters. But there's going to be a real life Squid Games. But I'm curious of what she got wrong in there. More than decorated skulls. What is the Day of the Dead and how is this holiday celebrated? And these are not controversial type headlines, right? These are just stories that seem kind of mundane, right? Friends and also family, how the unofficial holiday Friendsgiving has grown. But
it's money. I mean, she was doing this for money.
I understand, but we're looking at these articles, and I'm looking at the headlines and thinking to myself, how bad is it? It doesn't have to be controversial subjects, just fabricating things. But how many times have you read an article in the paper and said they got it completely wrong because you know the subject matter, right?
Right, but if you're writing for entertainment,
yeah.
If you're writing basically fiction that fits that the editors will grab on and throw in there because it's good copy for the readership, and they don't go back and check.
McDonald's employee leaps out of drive-through window to save woman choking on a chicken nugget. Article's been deleted from USA Today.
I didn't know that window was that big, or the McDonald's employees were that small.
Here's one that could be controversial. Anti-vaxxer pushes urine therapy as COVID antidote without scientific evidence. I'm having fun with these headlines here. Russian troop halts attack of nuclear power plant but remain in control. How dangerous could this be? And it goes on and on. Again, all these kind of mundane type headlines. just want to know what her motivation was to. You said money, but I think.
But also, just consider: did she write the headline, or did a headline writer? A headline writer wrote the headline because she filed a story, and they went, "Ooh, this is juicy. We'll get more advertisers if we run this tone of article."
Here's a headline, and this is a total different subject matter here, but here's a headline that I think is true to form of the article. It's Europe dialing back shocking policies on transgender kids and medical intervention. We only have a couple of minutes before the end of the program, but I encourage people to look this article up. It is from, I don't know where this is. I got this from Daily Wire as well. But it looks like that a lot of European countries have been dialing back on some of their policies, okaying medical intervention for kids who identify as a different gender than the ones they received when they were born or when they were conceived. And a lot has to do with this, what is the word here called? Gender dysphoria, which is a very interesting, important topic and something that has to be discussed and not silenced by wokeism. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday. My name is Jose Martinez. I want to thank everyone for tuning in.
Happy Father's Day, folks.
Happy Father's Day, everybody. And my last act here on Tall Tales, see if I can get this correct. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. HD3.
The mob got dangerously close. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. A stunning revelation during the third public hearing about the deadly Capitol riot. House committee members presented evidence yesterday during the broadcast that rioters got within 40 feet of then Vice President Pence. An informant also revealed the Proud Boys were willing to kill Pence because he refused to buckle to President Trump's pressure to overturn the election.
Advisors to Mike Pence worry that the scheme to intervene on January 6 by lawyer John Eastman could have dire consequences. Former federal judge Michael Ludig warned Pence that an effort to tilt the scale toward Mr. Trump would plunge the country into what he termed a revolution. Another warned that states weren't on board. Eastman argued that Pence had parliamentary muscle in the joint session, even though previous vice presidents rejected such tactics. But Pence's counsel testified that Eastman apparently wanted two sets of rules, and a special one for Trump.
Fox's Chad Pergram. Members of the World Trade Organization wrapped up 5 days of grueling negotiations early this morning. The 164 nation members agreed to a series of trade deals that, among other things, try to limit overfishing and increase health and food security. Critics are unhappy the WTO failed to waive intellectual property protections for COVID vaccines so that more could be produced for developing countries. A gunman opened fire at a church in Alabama last night, killing 2 people and injuring a third. Police arrested the suspect but have not released a name or a reason for the attack at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Vestavia Hills, south of Birmingham. And the Golden State Warriors do it again.
And that'll do it. It's over. The Golden State Warriors return to a familiar place. They're on top of the NBA world.
That call on ESPN last night as the Warriors grabbed